I'll be honest with you. The night this happened, I didn't plan on finding anything. Not peace, not clarity, not God, nothing. I just wanted to breathe. You ever reach that point in life where the world is loud even when the room is quiet? Where your thoughts won't sit still, your memories keep pacing in circles, and your heart feels like it's carrying a weight that nobody else can see. That was me at 3 a.m., and I know a lot of older folks understand this. That hour where sleep refuses to stay and the past refuses to leave. I was sitting alone. No lights, no noise, just the kind of silence that presses on your chest like a truth you've been running from. And you know, people think Hollywood noise is loud. Cameras, applause, interviews, all of it. But the loudest thing in my life that night was silence, thick, heavy, honest. The kind of silence that forces you to hear your own heartbeat and sometimes the things you've been trying not to hear for years. I leaned back in my chair, tired, not the kind of tired sleep fixes, but the kind life puts in your bones. And without thinking, without planning, my hand reached for something I hadn't touched in years. My old Bible. The leather was cracked like it had lived a longer life than I had, and the pages were soft and worn, like fingers had turned them 1,000 times before me. I held it the way you hold something fragile but familiar, something that once meant something, even if you forgot when, and for a moment. I just stared at it. People think the Bible whispers. It doesn't. It cuts, it digs, it reaches inside you and pulls out truths you pretend you don't see. So I opened it. No sermon, no pastor, no agenda. Just me, the quiet, and that old book breathing in my hands. My eyes landed on the first verse without me even choosing. Psalm 46:10. Be still, and know that I am God. Be still. Two small words that hit me harder than any fight scene, any stunt, any moment I'd lived on screen. You see, I've spent my life moving. Fast, loud, always forward, sometimes blindly. Playing warriors, fighters, broken men, tough men. But that verse felt like someone put a hand on my shoulder and pushed me gently into a seat I'd been avoiding. Be still, don't talk, don't run, don't perform. Just be. The older you get, the more you understand that stillness isn't weakness. It's confrontation, not with the world, no, with yourself. And most people don't want that fight. They'd rather stay busy than face what's inside. But that night, the noise was gone, the armor was tired, and I was exposed in a way fame never prepares you for. I started reading more, flipping through Proverbs, letting the words choose me instead of the other way around. And then another verse hit me like a quiet punch. Better a patient man than a warrior, one with self-control than one who takes a city. I stopped, just froze, because I've played men who take cities. Men who hold guns, men who stand tall, but patience, self-control, those never sell tickets. They don't make magazine covers. They don't trend online, but they make a man. And sitting there in that chair, with the clock ticking softly like a heartbeat in the dark, I realized how much of my life I'd spent being one thing for the world, and another thing inside. My hands rested on the table. Old hands, scarred hands, hands that had held weapons on screen, awards on stage, and the weight of mistakes off screen. And I understood something simple. The Bible wasn't trying to make me religious. It was trying to make me real. That night wasn't about heaven or hell. It wasn't about theology or rituals. It was about truth, about facing yourself when the world isn't clapping. When you're young, you think you can outrun your demons. When you're middle-aged, you think you can outwork them. When you're older, you realize the only way to beat them is to sit down with them and listen. The Bible wasn't telling me to be strong. It was telling me to surrender, not to weakness, but to honesty. And surrender, real surrender, isn't losing. It's letting go of the battles that are killing you slowly. Somewhere in the middle of the night, I turned to the story of Jesus praying alone in the garden. His friends asleep, his heart heavy, his fear real, and for the first time in my life, I didn't see a religious scene. I saw a man on his knees, asking for strength, and I thought, if even he could kneel, why did I spend my life pretending I never should? The more I read, the more the book stopped being just ink on paper. It became a mirror, showing me not who I was in the spotlight, but who I was in the quiet, not who the world thought I was, but who God knew I was. And you can lie to people, you can lie to fans, you can lie to yourself, but you can't lie to that book. Somehow it knows. I read until my eyes felt heavy, not from sleep, but from truth. I remembered faces. Mistakes, times I was too proud to apologize, times I was too angry to forgive, times I held grudges like trophies, and a verse appeared that felt like it was written for me alone. Get rid of bitterness, rage, anger. The Bible wasn't punishing me. It was freeing me. Sitting there, I whispered a prayer. Nothing fancy, just broken honesty. God, if you're still there, teach me how to be better than I was yesterday. And I didn't hear thunder. I didn't see light, but something inside me settled, like peace slipping in through a crack. By the time the clock hit 3:30, I realized something. The world teaches you to find yourself by looking in the mirror. But the Bible teaches you to find yourself by looking in the Word, and that night, for the first time in a long time, I saw myself clearly. The night was growing deeper, and as I closed the Bible, something inside me stayed open, like a window had been cracked in a room I didn't realize had become suffocating. The air felt different, almost lighter, but not in a dramatic, supernatural way. More like the moment after you finally tell the truth you've been hiding for years, that strange mix of relief and exposure, fear and freedom. I sat there quietly, almost not wanting to move, afraid the stillness would disappear if I breathed too loudly. And somewhere between the turning of those pages and the honest silence of the room, I felt something shift, something subtle but undeniable. It wasn't a voice, it wasn't a vision, it was a presence, gentle, steady, familiar in a way I couldn't explain. I remember closing my eyes not because I was tired, but because I didn't want the moment to escape. And then something happened that I still struggle to describe, not because it was loud or dramatic, but because of how quietly powerful it was. It felt like someone sat down across from me, without footsteps, without movement, just presence, the kind of presence you don't question because your soul recognizes it before your mind does, and I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel confusion. I felt seen completely, not the actor, not the public figure, not the interviews, the scripts, the roles, the expectations, just me, raw, unfiltered, unperformed. When I opened my eyes, everything in the room looked the same. The chair, the table, the faint glow from the street outside. But I wasn't the same. It felt like the whole room was holding its breath, waiting. I didn't see a figure, not then, but I felt one. Like someone was looking at me with compassion so deep it made my chest tighten. Not judgment, not disappointment, compassion. And in that moment I realized something. When God comes close, He doesn't expose you to shame you. He exposes you to free you. I whispered a question, almost accidentally. What do you want me to do? And the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thoughtful, patient, as if the answer mattered too much to be rushed. My heart felt warm and heavy at the same time, heavy with the weight of my past, warm with the possibility of my future. And then, the room wasn't empty anymore. He appeared, not with dramatic light or thunder, not with fire or shaking floors. He appeared the way truth appears, quietly but unmistakably. Jesus stood there, and the first thing I felt wasn't shock. It was recognition, like meeting someone you've never seen but somehow always known. His presence didn't demand anything. It didn't tower or intimidate. It comforted, it settled. It made sense in a way life rarely does. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Not because I was scared, but because my soul was listening in a way my mouth didn't want to interrupt. Jesus looked at me with eyes that carried both eternity and understanding, eyes that saw everything, my failures, my regrets, my hidden moments, and loved me anyway, and that kind of love, it's overwhelming. It breaks you in the best possible way. You realize how small your pride is, how pointless your grudges are, how fragile your anger is. He didn't say my name, but his presence spoke it. Every part of me felt addressed. And then he did something I wasn't prepared for. He wept, not loud, not dramatic. Silent tears filled his eyes as he looked at me, at the Bible in my hands, at the world through me, and I felt more humbled in that moment than I had in my entire life. Because when someone perfect weeps, it's never for himself. I felt a pressure in my chest, like I couldn't carry the weight of his sadness, and I asked, my voice barely holding together, "Why are you crying?" His answer wasn't spoken, but I heard it with absolute clarity in my soul. Because they've forgotten me. The words hit me like a quiet earthquake, not loud, but devastating. Forgotten him, not by the world in general, but by individuals, by hearts, by souls that once knew love and now carry loneliness instead. He showed me something, not a prophecy, not destruction, but the emotional state of humanity. People drowning in noise, in distraction, in anger they think is strength. In isolation they pretend is independence. People scrolling more than they speak, arguing more than they forgive, collecting connections instead of making them. And then he showed me America, not as a map, not as a political concept, but as a wounded person. A soul limping, a heart bruised, a body tired, a spirit divided into pieces that no longer speak the same language, and the tears in his eyes grew heavier, not because America was doomed, but because it was drifting. People moving further from compassion, further from mercy, further from the simple act of sitting still and remembering who made them. He showed me mothers crying alone in their rooms, fathers carrying guilt they don't talk about, children growing up without laughter in their eyes, teenagers drowning in comparison, adults numbing themselves with distractions because honesty feels too painful, a nation full of people who know how to fight but have forgotten how to love. And then something unexpected happened. He touched my shoulder, lightly, gently, and it felt like every heavy part of me broke open. When God touches you, it's not electricity, it's clarity, it's truth settling into your bones. And I realized that his tears weren't hopeless. They were pleading, they were calling, they were reminding, tell them. His presence whispered to my heart, not with pressure, not with force, but with compassion. Tell them I was here, tell them I still love them, tell them they still matter. I didn't feel chosen, I didn't feel special, I felt responsible, because when truth like that enters your life, you don't get to walk away unchanged. You don't get to pretend you didn't see it. You don't get to keep it to yourself. He didn't ask me to preach. He didn't ask me to convert. He didn't ask me to perform. He asked me to witness, and witnessing isn't a job. It's a burden, a beautiful one, a necessary one, and as he stood there gentle, grieving, loving beyond understanding, I felt something rise inside me that I hadn't felt in a long time, purpose, not the kind that comes from career or applause. The kind that comes from truth, from responsibility, from calling. That was when I understood this wasn't a moment, this was a mission. When Jesus touched my shoulder, something inside me unlocked, like a door that had been rusted shut for decades. I didn't realize how hardened I had become, how much of myself I had buried under schedules, expectations, and the quiet loneliness that comes from pretending everything is fine. His touch didn't feel like holiness descending from heaven. It felt like someone finally understanding the weight I'd been carrying without me ever needing to explain it. It was the simplest, gentlest pressure, but it carried more truth than any sermon I'd ever heard. And then, just as suddenly, he let go, but the warmth stayed. It stayed in my chest, in my hands, in the space around me. It stayed like an invitation. I remember exhaling, a long, shaking breath, because my body had been tensed for so many years without me noticing. Then Jesus stepped back just a little, as if giving me room to breathe. And in that quiet moment, I realized he wasn't just showing me his presence. He was preparing me for something I wasn't expecting. The room dimmed, not darker, but deeper, like reality itself shifted into a softer, slower rhythm, like the world around me had faded so I could focus entirely on what he was about to reveal. There were no flashes, no visions painted across the sky. It didn't unfold like a movie, it unfolded like memory, except it wasn't my memory, it was America's. Jesus lifted his hand slightly, not commanding, just guiding, and suddenly I felt myself sinking into something like a shared consciousness, as if the soul of the nation had opened and I was being allowed to witness its hidden layer. I saw people walking through crowded streets, but each one seemed wrapped in a bubble of isolation. They were close physically, shoulder to shoulder, but emotionally galaxies apart. Everyone looked busy, but their eyes carried a hollowness that haunted me. They weren't living, they were simply enduring, everyone pretending to be fine while quietly falling apart inside. I saw families sitting together in living rooms, each person staring at a different screen, not speaking, not connecting, so much noise and yet so much silence. Parents trying to hold their families together while battling their own invisible wars. Children feeling unloved even with parents physically present. It wasn't evil I saw, it was exhaustion, it was emotional starvation. I saw churches filled with people, yet somehow spiritually empty. People raising their hands on Sunday, but lowering their compassion the moment they left the building. Religious words spoken loudly, but kindness practiced quietly, rarely. Faith used as performance instead of transformation. Leaders more interested in applause than accountability. And Jesus watched it with grief, not anger, grief, because he wasn't looking at sin. He was looking at lost sons and daughters, children who had forgotten their way home. Then he showed me political rallies, not one side, both sides, and the energy was the same, anger disguised as conviction, hatred disguised as passion, people screaming, chanting, shaking fists in the air, believing they were fighting for righteousness while tearing apart their own humanity in the process. I could feel the spiritual temperature of the nation. It wasn't boiling, it was freezing. Hearts growing colder, more defensive, more suspicious of anyone who dared disagree. And Jesus' tears reflected that coldness, not because disagreement is wrong, but because we had forgotten how to disagree without destroying one another. Then the vision shifted again. I saw the youth of the nation, teenagers, young adults, lost in a storm of anxiety. You could see it in their shoulders, the way they slumped, as if carrying a weight bigger than themselves. I saw them scrolling endlessly, comparing their real lives to everyone else's edited illusions. I saw them trying to be perfect, trying to be relevant, trying to be enough. Their faces were young, but their eyes looked ancient, worn from battles they never had support to fight. Some were surrounded by friends yet felt alone. Others were truly alone, isolated in their rooms, drowning in silence. Jesus watched them like a father watching his children slip beneath waves they were never meant to swim alone. And then something darker emerged, not evil, not demonic, but tragic. I saw people numbing themselves, adults numbing their pain with work, money, distractions, teens numbing theirs with validation and false belonging, men numbing their vulnerability, women numbing their fatigue, emotional numbness becoming the new normal, hope becoming optional, purpose becoming absurd, people building lives full of things but empty of meaning. And Jesus whispered, not with his mouth, but with his presence. This is not what I made them for. Then I saw America's future, not the apocalyptic chaos you see in movies, but a slow unraveling, a nation not collapsing in fire, but eroding in spirit. A place where people stop trusting each other, stop listening, stop caring, communities that once thrived now disconnected, people walking past suffering like it's background noise, a generation more connected digitally than any in history, yet more emotionally starved than any before them. And then Jesus looked at me with an expression I'll never forget, an expression that held both warning and hope. This is the road they're on, he conveyed, but it is not the road they must take, hope. That single word changed everything, because the future wasn't fixed, it wasn't destined, it was chosen, day by day, interaction by interaction, heart by heart. It wasn't politics that would save America. It wasn't laws or leaders or elections. It was people, ordinary people remembering how to love again, remembering how to forgive, remembering that compassion isn't weakness, it's strength, remembering that unity doesn't mean agreement, it means dignity. Then Jesus stepped closer, and I felt the weight of responsibility settle onto me, not crushing, but sobering. They need someone who will speak. His presence told me, not as a preacher, not as a politician, but as a witness, and I knew what he meant. I knew exactly what he was asking of me, and the truth is, it scared me, not because I didn't believe, but because I knew people wouldn't believe me. They'd mock me, dismiss me, label me however they saw fit. And yet, standing there in that holy quiet, fear felt small compared to truth. How could I stay silent when I had just seen the soul of a nation drifting? I swallowed hard and whispered, "Why me?" And Jesus answered, not with words, but with presence, "Because you will tell the truth." And in that moment, I understood. I wasn't chosen because I was worthy. I wasn't chosen because I was wise. I was chosen because I was willing. Everything that happened after that felt like time wasn't moving normally anymore. It was almost as if every breath carried a message, every silence had a meaning, and every heartbeat echoed something deeper than anything I'd ever known. When Jesus stepped closer to me, his presence didn't feel heavy. It didn't feel overwhelming. If anything, it felt like standing in the warmth of something you've been searching for your entire life without realizing it. It felt like home, and yet, in that same gentle presence, there was a reality so sharp, so undeniable, that it made me understand how fragile hope can be if we don't protect it. He looked at me, not just at me, but through me, as if he could see every memory, every regret, every time I'd wished I'd done better but didn't know how. And then he said something that didn't sound like a command, didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like a request from someone who truly cared about us even more than we care about ourselves. "Tell them," he said, "not so they fear, but so they rise." There was no judgment in his voice, no anger, no disappointment. Just this heartbreaking clarity, like a parent watching a child walk towards something dangerous without understanding the consequences. He showed me faces, millions of them. People laughing, crying, working, struggling, loving, hating, surviving. Everyday humans trying to make sense of a world that keeps spinning faster than their hearts can follow. He showed me the ones who felt alone, the ones who had given up, the ones pretending to be strong while breaking quietly inside, and he said, "They forget they are loved, they forget they matter, remind them." And I swear, in that moment, it felt like the world wasn't broken, just tired. Tired of pretending, tired of fighting, tired of carrying burdens no one else sees, but Jesus did. He saw all of it. Then the vision shifted again, and I saw America. Flashes of light, cities shimmering in confusion and noise, people pulling away from each other as if every soul was building its own island. I saw the fractures widening not because people were evil, but because they were scared. Scared of losing control, scared of trusting, scared of being hurt. I saw anger masquerading as strength and silence pretending to be peace. And then I understood. The danger wasn't some storm coming from the outside. The real danger was the distance we were creating between ourselves. The storms were simply symptoms of hearts left unattended. But then, this part hit me hardest. He showed me what happens when even a small group chooses kindness instead of conflict, honesty instead of ego, compassion instead of comfort. The entire vision changed instantly, like someone cleaned a fogged-up window. I saw communities rebuilding, not because of some miracle falling from the sky, but because one person decided to love another person without expecting anything back. I saw people protecting each other again. I saw forgiveness creating bridges. I saw families healing, and I heard him whisper, "This is still possible." When the light began to fade and the vision began dissolving around me, I felt something I didn't expect, this strange mix of sorrow and hope. Sorrow because I'd seen how close we are to hurting ourselves. Hope because I'd also seen how easy it is to pull each other back up. But before everything vanished, Jesus stepped closer, closer than before, and his final words weren't dramatic or grand. They were simple, almost quiet. "Tell them I never left." And then he was gone. Silence fell around me, but it wasn't empty anymore. It was full of meaning, full of purpose, full of something I didn't want to lose. I felt like someone had placed a fire inside my chest, not the kind that burns, but the kind that guides. I sat there for a long time, trying to understand why he chose to show this to me, why he trusted me with something so fragile. Maybe it wasn't because I'm special. Maybe it's because I'm ordinary, because anyone could be chosen if they're willing to listen. Maybe that's the point. The message doesn't belong to the extraordinary. It belongs to all of us. And now, as I share this with you, I'm not asking you to believe me because I'm saying it. I'm asking you to listen to that place inside you that already knows truth when it hears it. I'm asking you to remember the parts of yourself you buried because life got too loud or too painful. I'm asking you to recognize that the world doesn't get better by waiting. It gets better by choosing. Choosing love when hate feels easier. Choosing honesty when silence feels safer. Choosing hope even when the night feels long. None of this is about perfection. It's about direction. If Jesus showed me anything, it's that humanity isn't dying, it's waking up. And maybe that's why this message matters. Maybe that's why I had to see what I saw, not to scare anyone, not to preach, but to remind us of something we all once knew but somehow forgot along the way. We were made for more than fear. We were made for connection. We were made for each other. And yes, we were made to rise. Whatever is coming, whatever storms shake the ground, whatever darkness tries to settle, we're not helpless. We're not alone. And we're definitely not abandoned. He hasn't left. He hasn't forgotten us. And if even one person hearing this decides to walk a little softer, love a little harder, forgive a little faster, the future changes. Just like that, because hope doesn't need an army. It just needs a spark, and maybe this is that spark.